Welcome everyone to the Emergent Essence Dynamics webinar number 11. It is April 28th, 2020, and our theme for this webinar is Awakening the Higher Mind. Now that is very all-encompassing, it goes pretty wide. So I selected a few things to focus on that you can practice on your own and what we teach in the EED courses as well. And the main thing we're focusing on here is the 8 circuits of consciousness. Now this was developed originally by Timothy Leary, and then it's been expanded upon by several other people. And if any of you know Timothy Leary, he was kind of controversial during the hippie era with psychology, the hippie movement, etc., and as well as using psychotropic drugs to create mind-altering experiences. But through that, he did identify more spiritual levels of opening the mind. And what I'll say is we can access these 8 circuits of consciousness readily. We just need to know how to focus, and it does not take 20 years of meditation to do it, okay? So, in fact, we're always experiencing these 8 circuits. And then I'm gonna, well, I'll show you what we're looking at here. What we're discovering today is the 8 circuits of consciousness, but with that, like, how do you get there? So we're gonna look at how to work with whole brain activation. That means your left and right hemisphere. So for those of you who are fans of neuroscience, we'll give you a glimpse into that, and especially how EED brings the whole brain together, not just the left and the right, but the front and the back as well. And I'll explain those 4 quadrants of the brain. And then going further than that, which also opens expanded levels of awareness and consciousness, is tuning the brain with the heart and the rest of the body so there is a whole coherent experience. And that is what opens up to us up to more expanded levels of perception. And we cover that in all our courses as well, as how to create that coherence. So what you can walk away with, though, is a simple guide for accessing expanded levels of awareness. And that is through where do you put your focus? And I'm going to walk you through our 8 levels of awareness, which maps perfectly onto the 8 circuits of consciousness, okay? And you'll see the difference because I'll show the 2 together. And the 8 levels of awareness are very easy to practice. Then along the way, we're going to give you tips for creating more congruence within yourself and coherence. And I'll explain the difference between congruence and coherence. And once you do that within yourself, you can start shifting how you interact with your relationships and with the outside world so that you can endow them all with more resilience. Meaning, when you're coming from resilience, that has a ripple effect on your relationships and then how the world is interacting with you and you are interacting with it. So with that very brief overview, and I understand if some things are going, what are you talking about? Like, that's okay. I'd just love to know what your reactions are here, meaning like what questions do you have already of what you'd be very interested in learning, or what brought you here in the first place? Just to hear briefly from some people, because that helps me tailor the webinar a bit to more to what you want and what you need from this. Now that you've got the outline. Anyone? Or if it all looks okay, just give me a thumbs up. I also need to know if we're frozen or not. No, we're not frozen, so I see people moving. Okay, thumbs up. All good. Okay, then we can just keep moving through. All right. Wow, you're all amazing. Okay. No questions this time. Well, I hope I hope questions do come up once you see what we're getting into here. Okay. Before we get into the content, for those of you new here, those of you who are accessing the recording who are new as well, I want to go briefly through what is Emergent Essence Dynamics and what does it do. All right. So where we come from in the EED approach and philosophy as a foundation we look at everything as being in relationship. I mean, we all, when we look at life, we're all in relationship with something. We're never existing in isolation. That includes being in relationship with ourselves. So everything works in relationship, and all relationships follow a unique pattern, which is fractal, meaning this pattern or these patterns repeat over and over again on the smallest scale to the largest scale. And as we move up in scale, things just become increasingly complex. But what EED does is it's looking at what's the pattern happening, and it simplifies it into its most basic fractal. So that what we're doing is, we're not really shifting people or issues, we're actually shifting the pattern. So we need to identify what's the pattern at work that's driving both the person and the issue, and then we can start creating a process of transformation working just with the patterns, all right? Now, how do we do that? Well, we have a model, it's very specific, and it's designed to pinpoint those fundamental patterns driving human dynamics, which means it can be applied to coaching, leadership, mediation, facilitation, healing, personal growth, personal interactions, even down to sales and dating and anything else. All of these things deal with human dynamics. So it's designed to fit underneath any kind of other methodology you work with, all right? And it will enhance any methodology you use. So how do we do this? How do we shift these patterns? First, we're going to create a foundation of resilience with whoever or whatever we're working with. Before we try to change anything, we want to have everything in a resilient state. That means then people become more fluid, more flexible, and we're cutting out most of the resistance, fear and resistance and reactivity that might show up, especially if they're about to embark on a change process, because there's natural resistance that arises. So resilience is the antidote to resistance. Then we are focusing on the relationship dynamics. We want to get people acting and reacting. So we're watching their actions, their behaviors, we're provoking actions and behaviors. And once that gets moving, we can start seeing patterns that start playing out. And then we can start distilling things down to their core patterns. And then we can shift those patterns in the resilient space that we created. And when we're doing that, things automatically start to transform themselves. And it's not just one issue, but multiple issues transform. Because the pattern works fractally, it's affecting many issues on many levels. Any questions there, or just give me a thumbs up that that's sounding okay? Okay, great. Niro, can I call on you? And the reason I'm calling on Niro is because we just held our online version of Module 1, and Niro has been attending previous webinars. And so now, when I explain this now, what feels different or what makes more sense here? Because I'm just checking, because you've been through the module now, right? Yeah. You've been in the before and now you're in the after. So, I mean, when
I attended a few modules.
Yeah.
And I think the first few modules, because this is something you start all your webinars with. So the first few webinars, I was kind of getting it, but I think when I attended the module, I really understood it, because then we went through, this actually getting someone into resilience before we move to action or to transformation. So I think that's something, but also as coaches, I think we know this, and I think it's just a reinforcement of this. But also I think by attending the module, I really understood the fractal patterns. So now I see them everywhere.
All right, yeah. An easy way to think of the fractal pattern is whatever's happening right now is happening everywhere else as well, in small ways or big ways. And all we're doing is opening our eyes to see it. And then that makes it so much understandable in where the person is coming from, whoever you're working with, and why you're experiencing certain things in the relationship with them. For example, in coaching, you might have a resistant client, and a lot of coaches might go into self-blame or punishment, thinking, God, I must be incompetent. I don't know what's going on. Why am I not handling this as well as I can with other clients? It may not be you. It may be they're projecting a pattern onto you and you're getting sucked into it. But when you open your eyes to that, it gives you so much more information on what you can now choose to work with, and it takes the burden off your shoulders to put this pressure on that I have to create value for the client. And when you push for that, you may actually be aggravating their pattern that they put on you in the first place. So, yeah. So when we understand things as patterns that work fractally, it gives us a bigger meta view on what's going on with our clients, with the individuals, or with our groups. Okay. Was there anything else anybody would like to say or add to, or does that spark anything? Or just give me a thumbs up to move on and we'll get into the content here. All right. All good, all good, all good. So let's look at these 8 circuits of consciousness. And I do have a book to recommend to you that if this interests you, you can go do further reading on it, okay? And I'll give that to you a little bit later. So you can see this arrangement of 8 circles. You have circles 1 to 4 on the bottom, and you have circuits 5 to 8 on the top level. So there are 2 levels. Here's the terrestrial level and the transpersonal level. The terrestrial level, circuits 1 to 4, just means these are circuits of consciousness that happen within our ego or our identity. It's our earthly experience, our everyday earthly experience. Basically, these are 4 levels of consciousness that have to do with taking care of our physical needs and our needs in life and in order to function in the world. Okay, and so what those look like are on the first circuit, that's taking care of our body, our core vitality. That means we need to eat. That means we want to be taken care of. We want nurturing. This is like the very first circuit we hit when we are a baby, all right? And we're born, and we have that nurturing connection with our mother, for example, when she's breastfeeding. So this is a very earthly circuit. It's really about body, nutrition, vitality, and stability, all right? Having a foundation beneath our feet, okay? And this, by the way, we go over in detail in our module 3. So that's out there for Mark, who wanted to know, where does this apply? We teach this in detail in module 3. The whole module is based upon these circuits. Then as the baby starts to grow up and starts to be able to walk or crawl, we're moving into the second circuit. This is our emotional, it's based on emotions and power struggles. It's territorial, it's our political territorial circuit. So this is more external. This is where we're moving around and we're exploring and we're finding what our boundaries are, and we start to relate to other people, and we want to see what we can and what we cannot do. And it brings up power struggles because of the boundaries that we run into. And this is where, you know, in the terrible twos, the child is running all over the place and they're having temper tantrums because they can't get their way. So our power emotions start to get activated, okay? Then in circuit 3, we start moving into making sense of things. This is our mental circuit. This is where we start creating maps. This is when the child starts talking. And you know, when the children start talking, they start asking a lot of questions, and they start to say, why is this that way? And why is the sky blue? And why are you doing this? And why is this happening? And why, and why, and why, and why? So they're starting to make sense of the world around them, trying to put it into categories, put it into maps, so that they can get an orientation of where they are and why things work, okay? So circuit 1 gives us our foundation to give us security of self, and that our body is taken care of and that we are nurtured. Then we start moving around in circuit 2, and we start seeing what is the world we're in just by exploring the boundaries and the whole territory. Then in circuit 3, we're moving into our mental circuit, which then makes sense of the world we are in. And that leads us to circuit 4, the sociosexual circuit. This is activated around when we're hitting puberty, because we're making the transition from child to adult. And this is where we realize we have a function in the world. And that means we contribute to society. We need to take action. We have relationships that help us function in that world. And we also realize we can reproduce and become an adult ourselves and have our own family. And what that does is then that brings us back to circuit 1, because then when we have a baby as a parent, we are now focusing again on circuit 1 to take care of the baby. And then they move up through the circuits. And so this is what's called closing the terrestrial circuit. When we are focused on our daily earthly functions and needs, we get sort of caught in a loop of just these circuits, okay? And we go round and round and round.
Troy, is this mapped to Maslow's hierarchy of needs?
It could probably match on that. Yeah, I mean, because this is like, what does my body need? You know? Yeah. What do I need in, let's say, basic relationship? What do I need mentally? And then what do I need in the world to function? Okay. Now, EED has 8 levels of awareness that we teach you right at the beginning from module 1. And those 8 levels match directly onto these circuits. So here, and 8 levels of awareness means where am I putting my focus? So this is a self-focus. I'm just focused on me, totally concerned with who I am, what am I doing, what am I judging, what am I thinking? Then when I focus out there on the other person, I'm expanding my awareness, but then I can also start to be aware of power struggles, others' emotions, how they're affecting me, but I'm aware of what's out there with the other. Then in the 3rd level of awareness, it's more of a global focus. I'm aware of what's around me. And then in the 4th level, I'm aware of the dynamic between me and what's out there. So, you'll get I'll show you a diagram of what those 4 levels of awareness are, but they map perfectly with these lower circuits. So a way to get into these circuits is through those levels of awareness. Put your focus on yourself and your body and your core vitality. You're in circuit 1. Put yourself aware of others and the power struggles that start to emerge, the territory you want to protect or that they want to take or protect. You'll get into the 2nd circuit. When you start becoming aware of what's around you and start putting sense to it, when you start to become fascinated with why are things the way they are, you're in the mental circuit. And then when you start to become aware of what's happening between me and something, what's the dynamic or the game that's being played out, you start to get into the sociosexual circuit. This is also where, how am I functioning? How am I functioning within every relationship, okay? Whether that's with another person, an event, or the entire world. Any questions there before I move to the upper circuits, or is this sounding pretty okay for you? Okay. Now, we'll enter these upper circuits go beyond identity, they go beyond ego. These are called the transpersonal circuits. So you have to get beyond self. And the way you get beyond self is one way is through resilience, when you realize, I don't need to struggle to survive. I don't need to live through fear and reactivity. When I realize, I'm okay, my needs are taken care of, that gives us the opportunity to open to these higher circuits. Now, our life in civilization, in the 20th century civilization, has been allowing us more and more to reach these transpersonal circuits just simply through automation. Where we are no longer, if you live in an urban environment, we're no longer tilling the land, growing our food, living, you know, and producing our own energy, electricity, etc. Right? Like a lot of stuff has already been taken care of. That gives us time to explore these upper circuits. You can go take a yoga class, you can go meditate, you can go dream, right? So you can, whereas 100, 200 years ago, we weren't necessarily able to do this because we didn't have the time. And we spent 12 hours a day just trying to survive. And that's what kept us in the lower circuits, all right? So what are these circuits? Circuit 5 has to do with tapping into body wisdom and internal energies. For example, if you're doing yoga or a very still meditation, you can then start to have more dialogue with the body wisdom, and you can let things bubble up, all right? Another way is just, what's related to circuit 5 is smoking marijuana. It relaxes the body, it opens the mind, and you can open your intuitions more, okay? Circuit 6, it's related to circuit 2. Remember, circuit 2 is about exploring territory, physical territory. Circuit 6 is exploring territory, like multidimensional territory, territory within the mind or outside the mind. So this is like dreaming, visioning, all right, going on shamanic journeys, etc. It can even include out-of-body experiences, astral travel. And this is the circuit that where psychotropic drugs belong, like magic mushrooms and LSD, because we're opening up to other dimensions that we can go explore through our mind, not physically, okay? Circuit 7 has to do with, let's call it higher intelligence, divine intelligence. It's the mystical circuit or the mystical religious circuit. This is where we believe in, let's say, an external higher intelligence that's out there. This is where we get into religion, where we're worshiping a higher God, okay, who is controlling the universe or controlling us. But this has to do with divine intelligence. You can get there through quantum physics when you realize that everything is interconnected and there's intelligent design when we start to explore cosmology. So this is the cosmic circuit, and what's here is synchronicities, how everything is interconnected. When we get into the circuit, we realize everything makes a contribution to our experience, and we contribute back. So there's a back and forth dialogue between ourselves and the universe. This is where we can start acting upon intentions with our world around us and how it can react back, okay? Like Goethe is saying, when you make a commitment to an intention, the universe provides, or providence opens, all right? Well, this is the level of understanding in synchronicities. And Timothy Leary originally stopped there. And he said, okay, so I guess there's 7 levels of consciousness here. But then, and this was quite typical because most of us were conditioned to think, oh yeah, once we reach sort of a religious level and believe in a divine intelligence, that's the highest we can go. But then there's one further, and this is where we become the creator. We are at one with the creator, is more accurately to put it. So if there isn't a divine intelligence or an intelligence to the universe, rather than thinking it's out there and beyond us, Circuit 8 puts us right inside it, where we are the universe, we are ourselves, and the universe. We are all the interconnections. And the focus here is creativity. It's the divine creator consciousness. Now, I mean, we all access this when we get a creative inspiration. If any of you have been in a flow state where you get a great idea and you're there for hours and hours and hours just creating, or you can get lost painting, or lost playing music or writing, or even in a stream of consciousness conversation with a good friend, we're accessing this circuit. It's our circuit of creativity, all right? And it's just, we are the source. It's not that the source is coming from somewhere else. It is within us, okay? And that would be the quantum circuit, quantum consciousness or creator consciousness. This is where I now am the creator, and I'm in response to the entire universe, because the universe is me and I am it. So our upper levels of awareness in EED are basically direct mappings. It's what's emerging, what's bubbling up, or where's the origin, what's at source, meaning I need to travel with my mind to find what's the origin, point of origin within something. If something's bubbling up, I can see where it's bubbling from. That means I have to let go of my own ego and travel over to where that source is. Then we have the systemic level of awareness, how everything is interconnected. That relates directly with relationship dynamics. So we have dynamics all around us, but then we start to see how all of these dynamics are working together as one system. And that meta-awareness is similar to the circuit of quantum consciousness, but it's where we're experiencing all of these levels of awareness at once. I'm able to freely move from myself to you, to what's around me, to the dynamic that's in between, to what's bubbling up, to what's at source, to how everything is working together in synchronicity. And it takes a while to practice that, but we can walk through those levels. It depends on where you put your focus. Any questions or comments here? Or what feels fascinating or interesting about this? Anyone?
I think what's interesting for me is that there isn't necessarily a step-by-step process. So like when you reach 8, then you're there forever. But it is that we're accessing it at different points of time, as with 5, 6, 7, 8. Whereas I think 1, 2, 3, 4 tend to follow a sequence, maybe, especially early in life.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think that, the transpersonal ones are, ones where you said, and I think maybe because now we're, a lot of our physical needs are being taken care of, we have more opportunities to kind of access the higher levels of consciousness. And it's okay, we just dip in and we come back out.
That's right.
Interesting, yeah.
And we can access, you see these vertical lines. When I start paying attention to my body and my core vitality, I'm already rising into the higher circuit, the upper circuit. When I pay attention to where I'm moving myself, right? Now I can also pay attention where I'm moving within my imagination. So this can be, what am I dreaming of? What do I envision? When I start daydreaming, I'm already in the higher shamanic circuit. Here is like, I can pay attention to the world around me, but when I start paying attention to how is everything interconnected, I'm already opening the cosmic circuit, right? Here is, how am I functioning? This is, what am I creating? So they're directly related there as well. This isn't necessarily what am I inspired by. It's what's my creative impulse right now? What is my sense of creative flow, all right? Because I could be inspired by the system. I could be inspired by the dreams and vision. I could also be inspired by the bits of wisdom that bubble up from my own body experience, all right? I could also be inspired by the power struggles or the emotions that I'm experiencing, or by the ideas that I'm coming up with, mapping out strategizing, or from just, how people are functioning with me, or I am functioning with them. So any of these circuits can be a source of inspiration, but this is the creative spark that's happening in the 8th circuit. And then we can progress, 1, 2, 3, 4, cross over to 5, 8. But then what's really important, and in my previous webinars, so there was one webinar 5 from 2019 called The Basics of Manifesting Realities, New Realities. It's really, and this works with law of attraction. We need to connect circuit 8 back with circuit 1. The simple way of saying that is, whatever I'm creating, I need to reap the rewards. So take my creation back into myself and feel nurtured and by it, fed and nurtured. I can't just create something and then abandon it or not recognize what I've made. It's like planting a garden and then burning it before you eat the fruits. And a lot of people do that. They'll create something and then discount it, say, that wasn't good. And let me start something new. And so they keep burning the crop. Do you guys follow what I'm saying there about burning the crop? Not enjoying the fruits of your labor. So when you are working hard to create something, it's really important to enjoy the rewards. And for some people that feel like, oh, the law of attraction isn't working, that's one of the reasons, is because they're not recognizing what the universe is throwing at them, and they're not creating from it and then enjoying the rewards of that, okay? They're just envisioning, saying the universe will provide as long as I have the good vision and intention. So if you're really interested in seeing how these 8 circuits map into the law of attraction, then email me and I'll send you a recording of that webinar, The Basics of Manifesting New Realities. Okay. Does that inspire any further questions, or would you like to move on?
No, actually, I have a question. So the terrestrial one, they can be essence and they can be pathetic, right?
Yeah, I'm going to move into exactly that when you're talking about resilience. Okay. Yeah, pretty soon. Yeah. Well, what I'll say is, you won't really. These are another way to think about it is these could be fear-driven circuits, or fear can live within these lower circuits. But in the upper circuits, it's not fear, because you're beyond ego, and only ego is driven by fear. All right.
But I think like daydreaming can be daydreaming out of pathetic self, no? But maybe if I didn't access.
Yeah, perhaps I could feed into it, but when you're pure, I don't know, maybe I'll change my mind later, because that's a good question. Like, can the fear feed into this? But I'm right now saying no, because you won't truly be open to this circuit.
Okay, I got
unless you are feeling resilient.
Yeah, right? I got you. Yeah.
So I have a question about 6. You know, like when we have vivid dreams and we have dreams, and we remember some of them, is that us accessing at level 6?
Yeah, I mean, I say so. I mean, it's just like if you have a vision or a dream, a daydream, night dream, then yeah, you are accessing that circuit. And with what's just, I'm toggling back and forth in my mind now. I'm questioning myself even, because of what Yusuf brought up, because I'm thinking, well, you have nightmares, or if you take a drug and you have a bad trip, or like if you take ayahuasca, right? It's all on that shamanic circuit. But what I'm thinking now is that fear may not be driven by you. That may be bleeding through from circuit 7, saying, hey, you know, the universe is communicating with you, trying to tell you something. Say, you know, there's something within yourself. You need 2 fates, and when you learn that lesson, you're even more in harmony and connection with that universe, and to make your way into becoming one. That's just another thought that passed through my mind, and I'm going to continue to investigate into that. So, but
also I had an idea. By default, if you are in like upper state, by default, to access this upper state, you need to be in resilience. So it's by default.
Yeah, that's what I mean. You need to be in resilience in order to access these circuits, all right? My feeling is that I could be down here and try to imitate that circuit, meaning I could have a fear-driven daydream and it seems like I'm there. But in my experience, and in my experience with bringing people into these circuits, they're in a resilient state when they are in these circuits, okay? And I can see imitations of it down here, but to truly be in here, I see them in resilient and receptive states, okay? Great that you brought that in. I like questioning myself. And maybe in a future webinar, I'll have changed my mind, and then I'll just be very clear on that. Say, hey, you know, I looked more into this, and now this is what I'm saying, okay? I mean, even if you look at my webinars a year ago, I am speaking a little differently than I was then, okay? All right. So I'm looking at time here and I was like, yeah, we're going to go a little bit longer than an hour. So for those of you that can hang on, great. I won't go more than 90 minutes. But, and if you need to leave at the top of the hour, that's fine. You do not need to apologize and you will receive the recording. Okay. All right. So I'm going to move into exactly what Yusuf was mentioning, you know, what happens when we're driven by fear. Geez, I forgot about this. Okay. So briefly for you to look at the 8 levels of awareness from EED. This is when I'm focused on myself, I'm sensing myself, and that can relate back to circuit 1. So this is a little illustration of what it looks like when I'm focused on myself. There's my bubble of reality. I don't see past the end of my nose, basically. Everything I do and perceive is based upon my own thoughts, perceptions, and beliefs, okay? Then I can expand out and I can go sense you. And then I'm going to start moving and through the world, moving for or against you. And then this is where I can start seeking power and validation from you or anything else. Globally, then I can start sensing what's around me. I'm making sense of the world. This is where I get into the mental circuit where I'm navigating danger, safety. I'm putting things into context. And then when I focus in between, this is me in relationship. Okay, and now I can sense my social function, the actions I need to take, the role I have in society. And that's what it looks like when it's all together. And for each level of awareness, I'm expanding my sphere of reality. I'm gathering more and more information, all right? If I only was stuck in this first level of aware of myself, anything outside of me just appears within the edge of my bubble. I'm not truly starting to experience those things outside of myself, okay? And the reason why it's terrestrial is because notice it's me sensing me. It's me sensing you. It's me making sense of the world. It's me in relationship. Everything has to, it all cycles back to me. That's why it's identity-based or ego-based. There's nothing wrong with that, but my central point of reference is me, okay? When we move into the higher levels of awareness, me is taken out of equation. I have to get beyond myself, beyond my central locality in order to sense. Yeah, and by the way, these are receptive awarenesses. I'm just receiving myself, receiving you, receiving the world. Now I get more active because I see how I'm interacting with things and you. The higher levels of awareness are transpersonal because I have to get beyond myself in order to sense what's bubbling up. And that can be anywhere, everywhere. What's over there? What's like if you're acting very bullyish or you're arrogant, like I can sense into where's that coming from? What's the source of that? I have to get beyond myself. I can also look at how is everything interconnecting? Well, I have to feel into everything and how it's connecting. That means it has to be beyond myself. And then meta-awareness is all of these levels simultaneously. Okay, so you notice here, like with emergent awareness, things can bubble up within myself, within you, within the environment, or within the relationship. And same with source. The source can be anywhere. The system is how it's all interconnecting together. And then meta-awareness is basically omnipresence. I'm everywhere at once. So as a small exercise, what you could do is you could go sit on a park bench. Well, I guess you can't do that right now. Well, maybe you can. Yeah, depends. Depending on how strict the rules are right now. Or you can go stare outside your window and just, you know, take a few minutes to just focus on yourself as you look around or look out the window, and then shift your focus to level 2. Now I'm focusing over there, that person, that tree. Make it a very specific direct focus. And then you can widen it to focus, what's the whole environment around me? The sounds, I hear the birds, I hear the car, you know, I see the green grass, and it's all blurring into one picture. Then I can look at, okay, now what's going on between us? What's it like, even in a conversation, what's going on between us? What are the reactions? What are the dynamics here? then you can start to say, all right, so what's bubbling up now? It's almost like living 1 second in the future. It's not anticipating, but it's just noticing how all the little impulses. Ooh, somebody's about to smile. Somebody's about to laugh. Somebody's about to get frustrated and angry. Then source is, what's the pure place that came from? And in system, it's, now how is everything communicating with each other, interacting with each other, cause and effect? Like everything has a ripple effect on itself. And then I can walk it back and forth. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, until it all starts to blur together where I'm freely moving anywhere I put my focus. And that is where you enter the level 8 of meta awareness, where you're experiencing all levels simultaneously. The thing I don't recommend is don't do it in a nightclub. There's way too much stimulus. You got loud music, people talking and bustling up against each other. Well, I guess right now we can't go to a nightclub, but eventually we will. But yeah, don't do it in a highly stimulated environment. It could freak you out, because it did me. So any comments or questions there, or does that seem pretty clear? Experiment moving your levels of focus, and you'll already start getting expanded levels of awareness. Okay, so the role of fear in the brain. So I'm sure you guys have heard in neuroscience, they talk of whole brain activation, and that our brain is divided into 2 hemispheres. We've got the left and we got the right. So we're pretty good at using our left brain, meaning it looks at little particles, little individual dots and pixels and letters, etc. It fine-tunes everything into separation. And it's very linear oriented. A, B, C, 1, 2, 3. It's very logical. And it divides everything down into time. 1 second, then the next second, then the next minute, then the next hour. And it tends to be very critical. Why? Because it is all about analysis, navigation, pulling things apart. It's deconstructing everything, okay? And interpreting. When we move over to the right brain, people will say this is your creative center. Well, not necessarily. What it is, it's just very holistic oriented. It has no sense of past, present, future. It's in a timeless state. It's also alinear, where as it's seeing the wholeness of things, it's seeing everything at once. Where the left brain might work in dots and straight lines and angles. The right brain moves in curves and circles, all right? And it is more receptive, all right? And in fact, it's said that the right brain is really gullible, okay? So it's so receptive, like it's the right brain that is programmable. It's the left brain that protects the right brain from being programmed. It's almost like a guard at the door saying, wait a minute, may you enter or not? I'm going to vet you out, because once you're in, you're going to highly influence the right brain. All right. The right brain is based on acceptance, full acceptance. The left brain is not based on acceptance. It's going to analyze first before it accepts anything. All right. So that's why I say the left brain is critical and the right brain is receptive. All right. Any questions there, or any little connectors going off here as I explained the left brain and the right brain, especially as how it might have a relationship to fear or not? Anybody? Or is it pretty okay? Yeah, okay. And what we're doing in EED is we're balancing the left and the right together. We are respecting the critical mind of the left brain, but we are also accessing the receptive mind. All right, it's particularly when we drop people into a resilient space, they have more access to the right brain where they become more receptive and they can start shifting their patterns around. If they're still stuck in left brain, they're not going to shift anything. It's very rigid here, okay? Or it's too analytical that they may end up just resisting all change because it doesn't match up their belief systems. Okay, now, there are 2 other sides to the brain, not just left and right, but there is the front and the back. Now, the back of the brain, like the amygdala, is more what we call the reptilian brain. This is based upon the fight, flight, freeze that you could that you guys have heard of. And in module 2, we work with this very specifically because this reptilian brain works in polarity, and I'll show you. I have a diagram for that here. But this is our fear and reactivity, and it's very rigid. So when the amygdala gets activated, or when this reptilian brain gets activated, we are triggered and we go on automatic response. It's like the most basic fundamental programming, and we just perform, basically in order to survive, all right? So this is automated response. When we go into the frontal brain, we are more lucid. This is where we're making liberated choices, where we're exercising creativity, choice, and will, all right? And in order to be able to do that, we need to be in a more spacious place with ourselves, a more resilient place with ourselves. The reptilian brain is extremely fast, the way it reacts. The frontal lobe will get hijacked by the reptilian brain, but the frontal lobe can take back the conscious drive. It is slightly slower because it is more spacious. It requires a little bit more time, all right? So we can move back and forth between front and back. And if we are constantly non-resilient, meaning we're fearful and triggered, we're going to be driven most of the time by the reptilian brain. But if we take a moment to recognize, aha, I'm in reactive mode, and we can spark back resilience, we can let the frontal lobe take control again, and then we can make choices. Do I continue with the reptilian program, or do I make more creative choices, or choices from my will and resilience, all right? So, in life and on these terrestrial circuits, we're going to be driven more from the left brain reptilian. And this is how we function in polarity. We're going to flee danger in search of safety. We're going to cling to safety and fight the danger. Or we may just freeze, where we try to just not react at all, pretending nothing is happening. And these are our shields of indifference, or apathy, like I don't care, or denial, like this isn't happening. When we're over here in our frontal lobe, when we activate a connection to source, we are resilient. We're able to be far more fluid with our reality and far more creative. And we're in a more receptive and timeless state, but we can also be very active because we have front and right together. So what we're really doing here is, in EED, is we're toggling between all 4 areas. So, and this is basically the way we describe pathetic self and resilient self, all right? The resilient self is resilient and willful action. The pathetic self is more fearful reactivity that is on automatic response. Any questions here, or, you know, I'm realizing, wow, I designed a webinar with way too much information in it, but whatever. For me, I'm just like, oh yeah, we'll spend a few minutes there. We'll spend a few minutes there. Does this elucidate or inspire or illuminate anything for you guys?
It's inspiring something. I never thought about the function of the different part of the brain that way. So this is interesting.
Okay. What would be interesting about it, or what does it take you, either in observations or questions? Whether I answer the questions or not, I don't know, but just let me know.
No, it helps me to see things in a different way, because I never thought the left brain was the one that protects the right brain to be too much creative, let's say. And if I think about my personal experience, I found that it's right. Sounds really familiar as experience. And also I knew that the prefrontal lobe is what we call the third eye, where intuition is, where the ability to find solution for everything, and is what make us understand maybe the connection with the wholeness, let's call it like that. And thinking about resilience, there is this thought that is completely intuitive. So I don't know if it makes sense, but bubble up in my mind by hearing your explanation here that maybe this kind of coaching is not working for the client agenda or the coach agenda, but for the source agenda that is different.
Yeah. And what we're doing is we're getting you in touch with source so that you do have access to the frontal lobe and the right just as easily as you do have access to the left and back. And then we reconcile them all together. And that's what I mean by whole brain activation. There's nothing wrong with left and back. But if we're there all the time, we're going to miss out on the bigger picture and a feeling of lucidity and flow and resilience. Whereas here, we're just going to get stuck in patterns, and they're very particle patterns, and we're going to be very, very, very close-minded, and we're not going to see beyond our nose or in front. We're just always going to be in reaction to whatever we perceive as danger, and everything becomes dangerous in that sense. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yes, absolutely. And the reconciliation of all the part of the brain is itself the wholeness, because we need also the other two parts.
Yeah, because otherwise, if we're only here in the frontal lobe and right brain, we'll have, you know, like, I won't even have a sense of time. Yes. I won't have a sense of context, past, present, future. I couldn't read if I do this because the whole page would just be, a blur of beautiful lines and figures, but I wouldn't understand language. Do you understand? That's what the left brain is for.
Yes.
To break the pictures down into the pixels. And the right brain takes all the pixels and puts them together. All right. So, yeah, I mean, we need to move freely back and forth. But this is what's not considered enough, is front and back and how left and right, front and back work together. And so I think that's what's maybe unique here in what I'm presenting, is all four together. If you want more information on this little funny diagram, the vertical and the horizontal loop, we've talked about that in webinars 9 and 10, the two just previous to this. Core vitality and the essentials of resilient relationship. This would be resilient relationship, and this is your circulating your core vitality and resilience within yourself. And those are ways of getting in touch with the frontal lobe and the right brain together. So those webinars give you far more detail on how to activate those. And I'm going to review it a little bit here. So balancing resilience and fear, the simple explanation for that is, so this is source. This is a place of no identity. This is the place of our own essence, let's say, you know, the permanent, timeless sense of self, or the experience of infinite consciousness, however you want to call it. But it's where we're not driven by an identity, a set of preferences and defaults and conditioning, okay? This is your level of all potential. We have a resilient nature, which you could say is the frontal lobe and the right brain. And then we have a reptilian nature, which could be the left brain and the back of the brain together, the reptile brain. Now, the difference between them is that our resilient nature, why is it so fluid? It's because it has a free-flowing connection back and forth to source, whereas the reptilian nature feels cut off from source. It's left to its own devices. Therefore, it's driven by this sense of disconnection, or this gap, which produces fear. So what does it need to do? It's going to take action in a different way than the resilient self will take action. The reptilian nature is going to take action because it's constantly asking, am I okay? And it seeks an external source. It wants to have that foundation that it feels disconnected from. And so all of its actions are based on survival. It's seeking a source of power in order to control things and feel validated. Okay, so it's not just about running away from tigers in the jungle. It's also having those power struggles within the tribe to either belong to the tribe or control the tribe or follow the rules or break the rules, but it's all seeking a sense of security. So it has the control and a sense of security that it feels like I exist. That's the validation, okay? The resilient self, or our resilient nature, is taking action simply because it says, well, I'm connected to source. I am the source. I'm okay. Therefore, I can thrive. So all of its actions just simply create from source. And that is what enables us to hit those upper circuits. It's this feeling of I'm okay. That's the difference. Am I okay keeps us on the lower circuits. And we need those lower circuits in order to take care of our body and the way we function in the world. But if we're there constantly, we'll never get access to higher inspirations or higher awareness, okay? Does that help start to pull in the brain functions plus the circuits together a little bit? And by the way, we look at this, again, in webinars 9 and 10. Okay. Anyone? Or just give me a thumbs up that this is good. Okay, excellent. All right. So what happens when our reptilian nature gets activated? Well, we can move ourselves into our core resilience, and that is just simply asking, okay, I know I'm threatened. How am I still alive even under threat? We want to move ourselves to a spark of resilience and reconnect to source. The webinar 9, Core Vitality, shows you exactly how to do this. And we go into very much detail in module 1. We spend all of module 1 just making this transition. There's many things you can do in detail. And what we eventually want to do is have a free flow between the reptilian and the resilient nature, because the reptilian nature gives us reasons to create, and then the resilient nature creates. Okay, the resilient nature may never, it has the capability of creating, but it might not recognize what is it I should create now, or what is it I can create now. The reptilian nature informs it. Ah, this is needed. Ah, that's needed. And it says, great, I'll handle that creatively, and I will create. The reptilian nature is not creating, it is validating and controlling. That is the big difference. So we want this in balance with each other, so that there's reciprocity. How you doing with that? Seems okay? Okay. So how do we get in touch with those higher circuits or that resilient nature? It is by creating congruency within ourselves. We have thoughts, we have emotions, we have physicality, meaning words and physical movements, physical posture, physical gestures, okay? When we match our thoughts with our feelings, with what we're doing physically, meaning then we can start to access our transpersonal self and then get in touch with source. And source can start to flow through us, and that we could call inspiration or intuition, okay? But if we are not congruent with what we're thinking, feeling, and doing, we're gonna get mixed messages, and it cuts us off from those higher sources of wisdom. So the first thing we're doing with EED is when we're working with someone, we want to match up their awareness and their experience. What are they experiencing? How does that match up with what they're aware of? For whatever they're aware of, we want to match up their experience. So if they're thinking I'm sad and acting like they're happy, it's not a matchup. We want to pick one or the other. All right, let's go with the sad thought and let the body be affected instead of resist. Because if the body is resisting the sad thought, it's going to try and create something else that is incongruent. So therefore, you know, oh, I'm so pleased to see you, but I'm thinking I hate you, right? My body's smiling, but my eyes are not, right? Because they're thinking something else and they're seeing something else, okay? So the first thing we do as we move somebody into a resilient space is we start lining up their thoughts, feelings, and actions. And then that opens them up to the more transpersonal experience of relaxation, receptivity, and resilience. And then we can start shifting those patterns from a source level, all right? And as we do that, we can go back and forth between the moment of now and then accessing source and then reconstructing the next moment of now, okay? And we can keep flashing in and out from our physical reality to source, and that is what enables transformation. If we're incongruent, then these dots don't provide a new experience. It's just a repetition of the last dot. But if we are accessing source, each one of those new moments truly does become a new moment with a new self. Because from source, we're collecting from the all potential and we're rearranging it into a new thought, new emotion, new body, new self. Now, go study the holographic universe, and it's basically saying the same thing, all right? But it's only through congruence that we can access that level of source and then rearrange ourselves as a completely new person in a new reality as we flash in and out. Now, that might sound esoteric, but more and more consciousness research is realizing this. So, you could read Michael Talbot, The Holographic Universe. You could do further studies. You could even look at Rupert Sheldrake on morphogenetic fields, etc. But they're all basically saying the same things. And same with quantum physics is saying we basically flash in and out of reality, constantly collapsing between wave and particle. So if you want to think, there's your wave of all being, and there's your particle of crystallized being in this moment in the now. Any comments or anything on that? Again, this, when we're able to access these levels, again, it's higher mind, it's expanded awareness, different levels of consciousness.
Actually, for some reason, this diagram made me remind the tree of life.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about essence, the Kabbalah. So, and I was thinking to request from you to make like just when you can, just a webinar on the tree of life, the essence.
Yosef, yes, you have to look at the bonus material I recorded from webinar 9, Core Vitality and Resilient Wellbeing. I
It's there?
10 essential qualities, and I've mapped those 10 qualities onto the Kabbalah's tree of life.
Because I see this diagram in a way interact somehow with that.
Yeah. So when we're in an essential state, we're accessing source qualities, which I'm getting into next. You know, the basic ones are peace, love, unity, limitlessness. They're unconditional. And then with all their variations, it ends up being about 10 qualities that we can migrate through.
Yep.
And then we can pull an essential quality into our thoughts, emotions, and physical experience. And then we are having a source-connected experience in the physical world, right? It's plugged into any of those essential qualities, or Sephirah from the Tree of Life, for example, right? So you don't have to live completely on those spiritual realms. You can funnel them in, but it means you need to practice congruency. So as a simple exercise, check in. What am I feeling? Okay. What am I thinking? And what am I doing? And then say, if they're all different, pick one. Okay. And then match up the other levels. So if I'm thinking I'm unhappy, then say, how is my body affected by the unhappy thought? And then what's the feeling that goes along with it? Or if my body is standing in a very confident posture, then say, okay, so pay attention to the posture. How does that affect my thought? And how does that affect what I'm feeling? And start to line them up, okay?
So to go with the dominant one always.
Or anyone. It's easiest to go with the dominant one. But also, it may be just the one that you feel more connected to or more resonant with. Because sometimes, why are we having incongruencies? Because we may have a dominant thought, feeling, or physical experience, but we might have judgment of it and then try to counteract it on another level. You could connect with the dominant one or the one that is more simple to connect with, okay? But just know that when you're lining those levels up of thought, emotion, or body, there might be a little bit of resistance, and then just pay attention again to either the one you're choosing or the simplest one to connect to, and let it affect the other levels. Be fascinated or curious about how is it affecting these other levels, okay? So, and by circulating source energy, that also helps you create more congruency, because this is about circulating resilience. And a source quality is self-generating, self-perpetuating, and unconditional, where you feel like there's nowhere to go, nothing to do, nothing to be. A simple example is I have a moment of peace and calm, and when I connect to that and simply enjoy it, I don't need to take action. Source being is the state before taking action. And the common qualities, as I mentioned, are peace, love, unity, or limitlessness. Then I can, and this is again in webinar 9, that allows me to let fear go. I can take in something that's revitalizing. I can give that quality away, and I can receive inspiration. And when I say give it away, it doesn't mean it's draining from me. It means it's so charged up that I have an abundance of it that I can just give it, and it's always there anyways, all right? So then we can talk about brain-heart coherence. When we start circulating that vertical loop, we can even start circulating it between our body centers of head, heart, and gut. And this again is relating, these body centers are relating a bit to that reptilian nature of validation and control. Our head is always navigating safety and danger. Our head center, that's mostly, say, left brain and reptilian. But when we move down to the heart, there's its own wisdom and brain center there as well. And it is most concerned with magnetism, relationship, all right? It's concerned with unity and the impulse of unity and love, creating connection. The reptilian brain can steal from that and interpret that as I need to be validated. But the heart center is more at a source level of I'm radiating, all right? Connection, I'm receiving, it's more like a magnetic radiation of I'm in magnetic connection with everything. That's a magnetism. The gut level is more of the power center. It's and that's the impulse to move. It's drive. It's action. Okay. The head can steal from that and say, I need power in order to control things. But the gut itself, okay, that's actually what's in control of things when you're hungry, when you're horny, when you're actually horny is going to be a little lower than the gut, but and when you're when you're fighting the tiger. I mean, the head will say, "Ooh, there's a tiger! Danger, danger!" But when you're either running from the tiger or when you're fighting the tiger, it's your gut that's really in control because it's controlling all the movements. Okay. So over the, in this 20th century, all of these like the heart and the gut center has kind of moved up into the brain, and the head is trying to imitate all of it. And so we're stuck up here and we're actually not accessing true wisdom from the heart or true wisdom from the gut. But when we can activate this vertical resilience loop, we can then start doing these mini loops between the head and the heart through a give and receive. All right, what's the strength of the head? What does that give to the heart? How does that affect the heart? Or what's the strength of the heart and what does it give to the head? All right, it's a back and forth. Oh, there should be another arrow right here. So that there's a give and receive between all of them. And then we can do a grand circulation of the function of the head and its strength, the function of the heart and its strength, the function of the gut and its strength. And they can start giving and receiving between each other so they're more in harmony. Okay, and this is something we do a little bit in module 2 and a lot in the Reconciling Conflict course, is we're creating an internal reconciliation between our body centers. You can also refer to webinar 11, Ending the Victim Cycle of 2019. So note that, and if you want to see more of this, email me and I can give you a link to that on how to get the head, heart, and gut working in coherence with each other. So it's not just congruence of thought, feeling, and action, but also coherence between our various wisdom centers. There's more brain material not, I mean, there's brain material all over our body, all throughout our body. There's a high collection of brain material in our heart, and there's brain material in our gut. There's even arguments of when you're hungry and you're thinking of a sandwich, is that coming from the gut brain, or is the image of the sandwich coming from the head brain? Okay, so it's not all coming from the head. When we get these working in harmony, the head actually can experience less stress and anxiety because it knows the gut takes care of the protection and the power. And it knows that the heart takes care of the relationships and the connection and the feeling of unity. Then the head can just focus on clarity, navigation, and strategies. How are you guys doing with this?
Great.
What is, okay, so you want to expand a little bit, or what's specifically great about this?
No, because I am also an HeartMath licensed coach, and is a great reminding on how they work very well together, and they always needs to be reconnected, and it's coherence looks like quite different. Is also is different than the mindfulness really, because the mindfulness is about empower the parasympathetic nervous system. Here is the connection between the two, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic, and it's much more powerful.
Yes.
I experienced personally an incredible enhance of level of intuition.
Yes, this is actually quite bioelectric. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So when we're getting into an essential quality, a lot of times it'll land in the heart center, but actually more accurately the solar plexus, a feeling of unity, where we feel at peace, and we can even feel love, or we can feel some limitlessness, but limitlessness might even be up here. But unity and love are experienced here, definitely. Peace sometimes can be felt down here. This is why these essential qualities seem to land around here, all right? Peace, love, unity. And then we can circulate that. But if we move the center, all right, what we're really doing is if we circulate and then we can move the center around, and we're really tuning ourselves to the frequencies of each other. So when we move the center around, it's tuning itself into, let's say, down into an earth-based frequency, the Schumann resonance, all right? If you guys know what the Schumann resonance is, that's the frequency that the earth vibrates at. Because when we're circulating, we circulate energy within the body, but then down into the earth and then up into the sky, and it's a balancing effect. It's where I feel a part of the earth and a part of the universe and within myself. We take that same frequency and we start sending it up into the head. It's going to tune the head frequency back with the heart. That's called brain-heart coherence. So this is a tuning. It's not a fight. It's not the head trying to reach the heart or control the heart. It's more of the head is surrendering itself to the heart frequency, and the heart is surrendering itself to the head frequency. It becomes symbiotic, all right? So yeah, so to say a little bit more is these body centers are tuning themselves to each other. It's not just trying to control each other.
Yeah, so it's like exchange rather than dominance.
That's right. It's free exchange. It's a free flow exchange, and it's based upon give and receive. Each center has a strength, and they pass that strength on to the other center, which receives it, blends it, and passes that strength back. Okay, so it's like a blending of colors. Okay, I could go on and on and on with this, all right? I should probably just isolate each slide into a webinar into itself. So, but we can, once we get this circulating within ourselves, we can now start circulating it out there to other people. So I'm tuning myself to a frequency. It's connected to the earth, source, etc. I can give that out there to someone else. They'll be affected by it. At first, they might refuse it a few times, but if I just keep giving it with acceptance that, you know, they can accept or refuse, but eventually they'll let it penetrate. It starts activating them, and we can start tuning our relationships, because then there becomes a free flow of give and receive. And we proved this already in module 1. We get people doing an essence to essence communication. And once one person is already activated within themselves, they can send that energy over. The other gradually receives it and gives it back. And this is how we reconcile conflicts. Is we create a unity consciousness of a free flow give and receive, but it's all based upon a inner resilience that is then given, shared, received, which affects the inner resilience, which is given, shared, and received. So we have a vertical and a horizontal loop. And this is how we can tune frequencies with each other. And then we can further extend it out into the world. And this is where we hit those higher circuits of, we can have body wisdom within internally, circuit 5, but then we can be shamanic and start exploring out there in the world. We can have the cosmic awareness or the cosmic circuit of synchronicities by exploring out and taking back in, and the creator circuit of becoming the inner and the outer world at once at the same time. So that we're really like tuning ourselves onto all these different levels, but it's all based on an inner resilience and then giving it out and receiving back. It's all based upon a give and receive. How I'm in relationship to my inner world can then affect how I'm in relationship to the outer world, which affects how I'm in relationship to the inner world. That's quite kind of abstract, but we talk about this more in our webinar from 2018. It was in December. It was living in quantum relationship with everything. And we walk you through this as well. So, what does this bring up for you guys? Or what does it pull together? Or what questions does it inspire?
Actually, this slide is a same. It's a Reiki.
Reiki? You mean like
Yeah.
R-E-I-K-I?
Yeah, the Reiki. So
Yeah.
to do this, you need to be in pure state, and you can go out and reach other places to perform the healing or anything. So this is what struck my mind.
Yes, and this also relates to how does law of attraction work? Well, I'm in resilient relationship with myself, meaning I can be creative, and I'm creative within my inner world, my imagination, and then I need to leave my inner world and go interact with what's around me, but I'm in resilient relationship with that as well. And then I reap the rewards of that, bring it back. So I'm influencing both ways. It's coaxial. It's a reciprocity between the inner and the outer, and they eventually become coherent with each other, so that what I'm thinking is also what I'm creating, and what I'm creating is what I'm thinking. All right?
So go back to the first slide, the 1 to 8 points. It's the 8 point.
Okay, let me go way back. You get a brief review here. Playing the movie backwards. There you go.
So it's the 8 point, but acting from root, acting from point 1.
That's right. 8 to 1 and back. And it's all of them working simultaneously. Okay.
Yeah.
And it's from our inner to the outer world. Right. There you go. Playing the movie forward. Here we go. There. And that's a quantum relationship with ourselves and the world. Okay. That goes way into the esoteric realms, but it's what we encompass in EED to certain extents and to deep extents, I could say.
Yeah, but Troy, in a way, it's like the loop from Earth to sky. So it's not too much in space. It's have a root.
Right. Yeah, and that we teach right in module 1, right here. This we teach that right. That's one of the very first things you get in module 1. Okay, and then everything builds out from there. In modules 2, will help you start reconciling within yourself. It helps you start reconciling in your relationships. And module 3 is about reconciling with the world. And then with the conflict, we further reconcile so that you're reconciling internal and external conflicts, so that you're more congruent and coherent with everything. So what did we look at? Oh my God, a lot of stuff. So just to sum it up, we can freely move all of our experiences through the 8 circuits of consciousness. It just depends on where we focus. Me, you, outside, the dynamics in the relationship, what's coming up, where is it coming from, how is everything interacting and interconnecting, okay? As well as then, we can consciously move from our reptilian brain to the frontal lobe just by simply connecting to a resilient spark within us, okay? And one great question is, what's something nobody can ever take away from me? And that what sparks up is your will, something that is invincible. It's not touchable by others. Another one is, for whatever I'm experiencing right now, whether I like it or not, what's keeping me alive through this? That's your resilience, okay? Connecting to resilience will open our mind to the higher circuits, because we're in a resilient state. We're able to lift up or move up into the higher circuits and open our awareness. We create congruency by aligning our thoughts, feelings, words, and actions. It's another way to allow inspirations in, or to let those higher circuits meet our more terrestrial circuits. We can activate coherence by simply facilitating a give and receive of resilient energy or source energy between those body centers. So if you're feeling resilient in one center, another center is resisting it, well, you can simply enjoy the resilient energy in the one center and generously give or send it to the other center and see how it receives it. The other way around is, for the resistant center, find what its strength is and move it into a resilient state based on that strength, and let it send to the other center. The other center that's already resilient will welcome it, and then have it send back, and the resistance center will relax and be more open and welcoming to receiving energy. Sometimes the resistance center needs a little bit of attention and has to go first, all right? When we are circulating source energy within us, then we can start endowing our relationships and our world with that very same energy, so that we are more in a resilient outlook, perception, and experience of what's around us. When we are resilient ourselves and we endow things or project that resilience onto things around us, those things start to respond in a resilient way. They may only flash for a second of resilience and then go back, but the more we give it and we're accepting of what we receive, and we receive it into resilience, the more the world and the relationships become coherent with the resilient state that we're sending and receiving, if that makes any sense, because we're tuning frequencies here. To be very basic, when we are resilient, we are also accepting. And that enables us to be flexible and adaptable. If we're coming from a conditional place, like, well, I'm resilient now, so you better be resilient too, we've lost our resilience. We've become conditional, and we're trying to control, okay? So we talk about that in our other webinars as well. If you want to find out more about the 8 circuits, I recommend this book, The Shamanic Path to Quantum Consciousness by Laurent Hugli, okay? And it breaks those 8 circuits down into detail, how to work with them and how to work with them together, and how that relates back to law of attraction. And that was one of our sources for module 3 in working with the 8 circuits. And then EED went beyond what Hugli writes about. And a lot of the stuff you're seeing is a bit beyond what he was writing about. But that, I find, is the best introduction to the 8 circuits you could find, rather than reading Timothy Leary. Although you could go look into Timothy Leary, but Hugli took it into a more, let's say, essential place, as well as it's practical and it's pragmatic, and he also relates it back to law of attraction and how the law of attraction works well with the 8 circuits and how the 8 circuits work well with the law of attraction. And so module 1, you get that foundation of resilience and how to circulate it. In module 2, we're working more with that reptilian brain, how to neutralize it, counteract it, how to meet strong resistance from resilience, and bring things back to the frontal lobe, all right? Because the reptilian brain really works in polarity, and that's the theme of module 2, how to neutralize polarities. Module 3 is about pulling everything together in coherence, congruence, using the whole brain and opening those higher circuits. So we work with those 8 circuits of consciousness all through module 3. And we have an application of very special techniques and tools for each one of the circuits on how to really use them and activate it and apply them. As I said, our conflict course is about really like dissolving those power games, and our group facilitation and team dynamics course is how to work with all this stuff in a group setting from a leadership capacity where you have multiple levels of relationship, multiple levels of resistance, and multiple levels of resilience. Do you guys have any final words or what you're taking away? Our next webinar is next Wednesday, Accelerated Learning and Mastery. That's going to be a lot simpler because I'm basically going to show you probably just one slide and talk about it for an hour. So it's all about our process of learning, and that's going to pull back to the neuroscience plus back to the resilience and how you can have a resilient process of learning so that it's much more accelerated and you can have less pain and suffering as you try to master something. And we have modules coming up in June 12th in Frankfurt. That's module 1, but that might end up being online depending on how things go with the COVID situation. And then we hopefully are back to normal by the fall. We have module 1 coming up in October in Paris and Munich. And I'll get courses set up in Toronto and Montreal by the fall as well. What are you guys all taking away? Final words or thoughts or inspirations?
I'm taking away all this knowledge, and I'm already up there and trying to ground myself now and process it all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a ton to think about, and I think I've done about a year's worth of webinars in this one. I just didn't realize it as I was designing, because for me it was just like, oh yeah, this is common sense, and that, oh yeah.
No, it's condensed, Troy. It's condensed.
It's way condensed. Yeah. So there will be more webinars breaking this down, and some of the previous ones have. But yeah, okay, great. Yeah, take time to just be receptive, and you know you'll get the recording, and you can always pause it on some of these slides.
But definitely I'm gonna do this exercise about the go to your balcony, try to focus on yourself first, the second, then the world, the universe.
It's a great active reflection exercise or meditative. I mean, it's active. You have to be aware and conscious. And if you find yourself judging everything, you're back in the level 1. Do it through a fascination, okay? Just keep recognizing what's out there and just be fascinated with it. It's welcoming everything with fascination. Yeah.
No judgment, and what's fascinated about what's bubbling next. So about to laugh, about to scream, about to whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And guide yourself through those 8 levels of awareness or 8 points of focus. And once
but in a way you have to sorry. In a way, you have to wake up every part of your brain, and you have to maintain. Okay.
I'd say it's actually the other way around.
Right.
Yeah, but by being really just flowing with it, pointing your awareness here, there, you know, through the 8 levels, coming from a simple fascination, actually starts not rewiring, but realigning everything. So you don't have to don't work the brain, but let your points of focus from a welcoming fascination. It will all start having the effects, and it'll rewire itself. so to speak. So I was going to say it's the other way around from what you said. I don't need to manipulate my brain, rather be more in a receptive mode. And then my brain starts creating the congruence and the coherence.
Yeah.
Anyone else? What you're taking away? Okay. Just give me a thumbs up if it's all good and you're like, yeah, I enjoyed it. Okay, great. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much. And, you know, if you have more questions, or as I've mentioned previous webinars, some of them are not on the public YouTube playlist, so, or the public YouTube channel. They're on a private playlist. Just shoot me an email, troy@essence-dynamics.com, to say, hey, you mentioned this point or this webinar or that webinar. Can I get a link to listen to it? And I'll gladly give it to you. And then you can visit our website, essence-dynamics.com, or follow us on Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube @EE Dynamics. And again, our next webinar is May 6th, Accelerated Learning and Mastery. And you'll always find a link to the registration site from our website. All right. So thank you, everyone. It was such a pleasure to well, work with you and to share all this information with you. And I hope to see you next week or next time. And in the meantime, enjoy life and enjoy your resilience. All right. Thank you so much.